I'm Fatheree.
This is Dave.
I'm Matt.
This is Brian.
And this is Tex-Trek.
Engage.
So welcome back aboard the Starship Texas for the 70th installment of the Tex-Trek podcast, the home of Star Trek fandom from deep in the heart of Texas, where we talk all about Star Trek, old and new. And tonight, Dave and I are again joined by Matt and Brian. And this week we are talking about Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan.
The least favorite of all the movies.
What many fans consider to be the worst of all Star Trek movies.
Wait. Are we still doing the Mirror Universe bit?
No, in all realness, this is often considered to be the finest Star Trek movie and tends to be a favorite amongst people who don't even really like Star Trek that much. There's a lot of non-Trekkies who have a lot of love and affection for this movie, it seems.
Well, the best of anything will generally be a crowd pleaser, I found.
That's a reasonable point.
Yeah. Though now I want to know what Mirror Universe Khan is like.
He's the ultimate follower?
Yeah, he would have been
He's
like
a
some space Jesus or
He's
something.
a genetically enhanced inferior man. He's dumber. He's dumber and weaker than the typical human specimen.
Well,
He's
they genetically redacted.
But they seem to keep the DNA because everyone looks the same. So that's the one constant across the Mirror Universes is the DNA.
Well, he would be like a genetic...
But personality would be completely different.
Would he be a genetic freedom fighter
He'd be
instead
off
of a
running
tyrant?
some island, fixing people's personal problems with a little midget.
Yeah, he might be like a utopian guy.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think
Welcome to Fantasy Island.
That is the Mirror Universe.
Khan. Yeah, we've done it. Solved.
All right.
He would have still existed in the 20th century.
Yeah.
So, Fantasy Island is just set in the Mirror Universe.
Yes, that's what they did. They built that. That's where people escape the horrors of the dark, evil Mirror Universe and go to Fantasy Island and have one bit of goodness in their life.
But
Okay,
eventually he was driven off planet because people could not accept that idealistic vision, and he had to flee with his crew into space.
If anyone wants to hear our crazy Mirror Universe con/Fantasy Island fan fiction,
Wait, we got to tie this in with Soren because Malcolm McDowell played the guy in the remake of Fantasy Island.
Oh, did he?
And
Yes.
that could also work because he's
The
an
Nexus?
Alorian, so he could have been alive in the 20th century.
Yes.
So the Nexus was the Fantasy Island?
So Khan knew.
Oh my god. This
knew
thing
Soren.
is writing itself.
Yes.
We don't even need to continue with the Star Trek II podcast.
Forget
This
about
is so
Wrath
much
of
better
Khan.
than Star Trek II. Fantasy Island.
So this is next for CBS All Access. I mean,
Alex Kurtzman, we have something to pitch you, so whenever you're ready, give us a call. You know how to get in touch with us.
I think he'll be ready to pitch it as well.
Well, but we will talk about the Wrath of Khan, I suppose, if we have to. If we can talk about our
got a little time at the end.
Since Ricardo Montalban is in it, I guess we can talk about it a bit.
So, just to go over some history of the movie, this was the sequel to Star Trek: The Motion Picture, which Paramount felt was way too pricey, so they really slashed the budget.
And way too Roddenberry.
And kicked Roddenberry upstairs, so he was an executive consultant who had very little influence or control over anything in the movie. And they brought on Harve Bennett.
He had great influence. He spoiled the ending, so they had to rewrite it.
I'll get into that.
He absolutely influenced the movie.
I think Harve Bennett is a name that we don't bring up enough in Star Trek circles. I often like talk about Star Trek has had different regimes over the years. Starting off with Gene Roddenberry and Gene Coons and the 60s stuff. And then in 82, we kind of get the Harve Bennett regime. And then, it'd later be Rick Berman. And now Alex Kurtzman is seemingly in charge of the franchise. But yeah, Harve Bennett was able to do some really incredible work on 4 of the 5 movies he was involved with. But he was a TV producer guy who was well known for getting a lot of great work done on budget, on schedule. So they basically bring him to make the cheap Star Trek movie. There's actually been a lot of people have said that Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan was originally going to be made as a made-for-TV movie, but from what I've read, that was never actually true. I think this is some confusion because of Harve Bennett's involvement. This was always going to be a theatrical release.
So he was instead of being an auteur, he was a rock-solid workman, a craftsman, who could get it done, but was not going to have a deep personal vision to put on screen.
Well, he did have some creative influences on because he was a writer. I think he was a writer at heart, but he was also good, like running a production of something. And
he was good at both.
Yes, and he oversaw the $6 Million Man, I think, and the Bionic Woman, and a lot of stuff that had a pretty big cult following. So I
don't know if you had told me at the time that the guy doing those is going to do Star Trek, I would have been that's kind of juvenile material. Star Trek should be at least elevated above that.
Well, they did have to bring in Nicholas Myers.
Yeah, so that brings us to the next guy that we're going to talk about was Nicholas Meyer, who was actually... this movie came out in 82 in July.
So
he was
roughly 3 years after the original?
Yeah. But Nicholas Meyer was 26 and a half when the movie came out.
Oh my god.
So whenever they were shooting this, he was probably freshly just turned 26, if not younger. And this is such a professionally crafted movie with themes about old age and death. And it's hard to fathom a 26-year-old having the experience and the maturity to pull off this movie.
And having only directed, am I right, 1 film beforehand, Time After Time?
Yes.
Yes, and he had done some writing. He wrote the Sherlock Holmes novel, the
7% Solution.
7% Solution.
And he wrote the script for it as well.
Then he wrote the adaptation for that movie.
Right.
Yeah. So.
But yes, it seemed
basically a fresh-faced kid.
Yeah.
And not only did he...
I assume he looked like David in the film.
Well, not only did Nicholas Meyer direct this movie, but they were kind of having a hard time finding a script. And they had 5 very different versions of the movie, 5 different scripts. And Nicholas Meyer came onto the project, rewrote the movie in 12 days. What makes this even more incredible is this was a guy who didn't grow up with Star Trek. In fact, I don't think he really had much fondness for science fiction at all. He tells stories of when he was flipping channels and he would come across Star Trek. The thing that alienated him and made him flip the channel immediately was seeing the pointed ears on Spock. That was too much. He couldn't even handle that.
Do you thought it was kind of a grotesque, or that it was just not we can't relate to that? So that's not a human story. Or something?
I think he thought it was too silly. It's this guy looks like an elf.
Right.
This guy looks like he should be in Santa's workshop or something.
He was sitting there saying, this show would be better if there were no aliens on the Enterprise.
Right. Well, yes, we'll get to that. He definitely got that edict.
So this is a guy who learned how Star Trek works. He figured out the DNA of Star Trek, and in 12 days wrote an excellent script, and then shot a almost flawless movie.
Agreed.
It's crazy.
At 26 years old.
He might have been 25 when he was writing the script.
Yeah, so there are definitely those people throughout the ages who even in high school they seem to have a maturity to their writing. It's probably 1 in a million or 1 in 100,000 or whatever. Yeah. But he clearly one of those guys.
I mean, he'd already had a hit novel that was so popular they made a movie out of it. So
right.
There's clearly some talent there. But yeah,
But also,
what have you done with your life?
With only 1 film under his belt, I'm impressed that he was able to to bring this in for such a low budget. You would think that you would want somebody with more. Well, like Harve Bennett, I suppose, but somebody who had more experience to be able to manage a production like this on time, within
From
budget.
what I understand, he very much kept Harve Bennett as his mentor to teach him and handle all of that budget stuff. They had a very good relationship. He was like, I was the apprentice, he was the mentor, and it worked great like that, so.
And while this is the cheapest Star Trek movie ever made, it certainly doesn't feel that way. I mean, there are things that if you're looking for them, you'll see, they reuse a lot of footage from the motion picture.
And a lot of sets.
And
more uniforms than you would guess.
Why is Kirk talking to Carol Marcus on like this tiny little monitor when he had a giant screen in the motion picture? But they really do use their budget very well to make a film that looks awesome visually. It doesn't really feel cheap. And Dave, you had mentioned to me that you were actually unaware that this was the low budget Trek movie.
If you had told me that once upon a time, I would have thought you're crazy, because I would think like the space battles look so good, especially in the Mutara Nebula. The Genesis proposal film in it with its CG fly around of a evolving planet looks so amazing, and even just like all the ship shots, all the sets and stuff look good to me. I mean, I grew up with the reruns of the original series of TOS. So, I'm perfectly okay with stuff that looks a little cheaper, but I didn't really feel it in this.
No.
Yeah, no, I never knew until much later reading up on it.
Speaking of that, this movie probably does have like the most behind-the-scenes information out there. It's very well documented. So
TMP is pretty well documented too, but...
I don't know. I've certainly read a lot more about the Wrath of Khan behind the scenes.
I think that was your choice, though.
But I would say a lot of it's been out there longer, I think.
But if you wanted to say this is number 2, I would absolutely agree with you. Because I
agree it's up there.
I research all the Star Trek movies as much as I can, and 1 and 2 are the only ones you can find any large amounts of info on, in my opinion.
There's definitely a lot to delve into if you're into that type of thing. But this movie also has the other famous factor that it is the one where Spock dies.
Really?
Yeah.
Spoilers.
Yeah. Just real quick aside, it's also one that's the only one that's a sequel to the show ever, right? A direct sequel?
Oh, because of Space Seed?
Yeah, Space Seed. Khan had been introduced on the original series.
Yeah. Yes. But the big thing with Spock dying, that was something that, as we just mentioned, that was leaked by Roddenberry because he hated this movie, and he hated what Nicholas Meyer was doing with his characters, with his vision of the future, with his idea of what Starfleet should be. And this is why I bring up whatever people want to talk about now about Star Trek, if Roddenberry would like this or not.
He hated this.
Yes, and I love Roddenberry. I have tremendous respect for him, but I don't think he's the be-all, end-all of Star Trek. He is definitely the guy most responsible for Star Trek existing, obviously, but there's been a whole lot of other people do a whole lot of work on Star Trek. And
going back to Gene Coon.
Yes, going all the way back to the original. So Roddenberry doesn't always know best.
And am I right that the main impetus for killing off Spock is because Nimoy was done with the character?
Yeah.
And he essentially, what was that, like almost a contingent upon him playing the character again?
Like a contractual thing.
Yeah, it's like kill him off so I can be done with this.
And Spock was supposed to die earlier in the movie.
I'm not sure if it was so much contractual as Nimoy kept saying no until they said, well, what if we give you a great death scene? And he's like, maybe.
Okay.
So yeah.
The death was going to be a lot earlier, but then Nimoy got so engaged in the work, in the movie itself, that he said, like, well, no, like I think there's more here for Spock to do.
Right.
And so they decided to move the death to much later in the movie.
Honestly, he gets so many good scenes in it. Almost every scene he's in is a good scene. I can understand why he would change his mind as he was making it.
But we're just going to go ahead and delve into the story of the movie just super quick. I'm going to give the Transwarp Summary of the Wrath of Khan to refresh everyone if you haven't seen it in a while. In this movie, it's a few years after the motion picture. Kirk is still an admiral. Spock is the captain, and the Enterprise is being used to train Starfleet Academy's next generation. No relation. Also, there's this guy Khan, a genetically enhanced superhuman you might remember from the original series episode Space Seed, who was exiled to a peaceful planet, Ceti Alpha V, with his wife and his gene-augmented superhuman followers. But Things on Ceti Alpha V didn't work out too well. 6 months into their stay there, the neighboring planet exploded for some reason that's never explained, strangely, and transformed Ceti Alpha V into a almost lifeless hellscape full of seemingly unending sandstorms and little monstrous bugs that crawl in your ear and eat your brains. So needless to say, he is pissed and he blames Admiral James T. Kirk. Khan commits grand theft starship when his planet is visited by the USS Reliant, and he and his peeps hijack that ship. He goes on a crusade to get revenge against Kirk and steals the Genesis device, a scientific experiment that can be used as a weapon of mass destruction. Kirk is able to defeat Khan through a stellar starship battle game of cat and mouse in the Matara Nebula. But the victory is very bittersweet as Spock gives his life to allow the Enterprise and crew to escape the destruction of the Genesis wave, which reforms the nebula into a new world with new life, but more on that in the next movie. But the movie starts off with this really solid opening that if you're going into this cold, it must be so cool. Like I don't really remember what I was thinking when I watched this for the first time, but it opens with the Kobayashi Maru, and we're introduced to the character Saavik, the new character in this movie, played by Kirstie Alley, and we see
and she's a Vulcan, like Spock.
Yes, and we basically see like the TOS crew die under the command of this weird young Vulcan woman that we've never seen before
in a dramatic incident with Klingons attacking in the neutral zone.
And Matt, you and Dave, I think both saw this in the theater.
I would have been 9, and you would have been whatever you were.
Yeah. I've got to do arithmetic. 15.
Okay. I too saw it in the theater, but only last year.
I've never seen this in the theater, so I'm the odd man out.
Well, I remember. First of all, I remember being relieved, as I believe was intended, because I had heard that Spock was going to die.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Roddenberry.
And when I saw this, and it's revealed that shortly after that it's just a simulation, I thought, oh, thank God, that's what the rumor's about. He's not going to die. Very effective, so that you
right. It's like they address it right out of the gate.
But also, it was very striking opening up and seeing. You get the if I remember, I think you get the Saavik pivoting in the chair into frame. There's a it's a
like you might be expecting
reveal.
Kirk or something,
right? Because everybody else, including Spock, even though he is captain, is at their normal bridge stations. But then you don't see Kirk. You see a woman you don't recognize, except she's Vulcan, and probably your first thought is like, oh man, another movie where Kirk's not captain of the Enterprise? Come on. Which indeed actually turns out to be the theme. But it's a good surprise. It's a good twist, and it sets up a little minor mystery.
The previous the motion picture began with a sort of very real threat with V'ger's approach. This one does a fake out before getting to the real threat.
Right, but it feels the same.
It feels ominous, yeah.
It's an action-packed opening.
But
it
what
also
it does
sets up the idea that Kirk and them, they're all teachers now. They're not doing the dangerous stuff. Right. And look, they're doing the dangerous. Oh, they're not doing the dangerous. Wow, they're kind of all gone to seed, haven't they?
Although what's interesting is that there's a cynical sense of humor that kind of enters, as well as just some regular humor, as Kirk advises Kirstie Alley, and we see she's a more willful, slightly more human Vulcan than Spock was.
Yeah, like she says "damn" when she gets flustered.
Oh yeah, right out of the gate.
Yeah. Behind the scenes, she was supposed to be half Romulan, and while all of that ended up on the cutting room floor, that was still how Kirstie Alley was instructed to portray her.
Right.
So,
but I do think one of the things that sets it apart a little bit from motion picture is that within 5-10 minutes of it, they brought in a sense of humor and kind of a wry quality to it.
Yeah, you have some humorous exchanges with, McCoy and Kirk asking about his performance.
Right. Aren't you dead?
Yeah.
To Spock.
And then also very effective in, and one of the best things about this movie, I think, is the thematic coherence, because in the opening, you not only get the Kobayashi Maru metaphor established, it gets extended throughout.
That's almost gotten into just regular pop culture.
Sure, but
it's like so well known.
But yeah, that thematic resonance extends through the end of the film. But also, you get it's Kirk's birthday. You get you can tell he's getting older, and it's a thing. It's an issue. Galloping around the cosmos is a game for the young. So you can tell he's feeling old. He gets the gift from Spock of
Tale of Two
Cities. So all these thematic elements are established without any with a good bit of subtlety. They fit smoothly into the theme. You don't necessarily assume that that book's going to come up again at the very end,
or the idea of facing a no-win scenario.
Right. It just seems like that was just a clever fake out and a cool action scene.
Or just like the concept of death being so present and in your face when death is a big part of the movie.
So,
what's interesting is, of course, that Kirk initially seems to be a proponent of the Kobayashi Maru, where he's basically parroting what an instructor would tell their students, saying, hey, this is an important test of character, you're going to be faced with potential death, and it's only later in the movie that they kind of roll out his very, very Kirk-like feelings on it, and it very much, I think it fits that. Almost, you talked to, maybe this was off mic, Brian, that you talked about Kirk's almost godlike status on the original show.
Yeah, we talked about that last week when we did the motion picture.
Yeah. Okay, that was on my.
Yeah. Kirk is portrayed as being pretty much infallible. Like when Tracy actually beats him up in a fight, you're like, "Holy cow! Kirk lost a fight with a human. What the heck?" Because that just is.
It's not usually done.
Yeah, Kirk is pretty much infallible in the original '60s show.
Well, we also don't know much about Captain Ron Tracy. Like he might have been a pretty spry guy,
but thematically on the show was not something that turned. Yeah,
it did not happen often.
And ultimately, this will take us in some ways back to that Kirk, but it's a nuanced vision of it where it's mixed with melancholy and loss, and his vision both of like not believing in a no-win scenario both works as a true kind of classic heroic legendary type of action, but it's tempered in the end by realism.
Yeah.
There's some deep shit that'll go on in that 2-hour span.
And like with the motion picture, it was very bold and showing us a Kirk that's not the Kirk that we remember. He's matured, he's changed, he's a little different, he's older now.
It does strike me that the motion picture set up many of these things more than I remembered it.
Yeah, and then the Wrath of Khan definitely builds upon that. Some people might even say that it's kind of redundant and you should just take the motion picture out of the picture. But I think they actually can be chained together. There's kind of like a coherence that we can, in retrospect, say that like, oh yeah, this is where the story builds to. But when we see Kirk at his birthday celebration with just him and Bones in his apartment, super badass set, by the way.
Oh, love that. Yeah.
But I think if you had only grown up seeing Kirk from the original series, this is not what you would picture Kirk's birthday to look like.
Right. It is so subdued, and
McCoy notices.
Right. And McCoy,
he's basically brought weed in the form of Romulan ale.
Right. And
or Cuban cigars.
Yeah. Okay. But yes, he seems a little I don't know, not baffled, but perplexed at what the hell's the matter with you? It's like, dude, it's your birthday. Why are we not celebrating?
Well, what's interesting is
why are we treating it like a funeral?
Right.
I think he knows, and everything he says is incisive thereafter. But I think he needed to push his friend to admit it to himself, or try to do what he could do to make that happen.
One thing I really like about that scene, and almost all the character moments, when I say character moments, I usually am thinking of Kirk and Spock and McCoy or some combination. But compared to the motion picture, where I felt those scenes were too clipped and didn't have room to breathe, these scenes all have a nice length. There's room for a little back and forth exchange of
don't mince
dialogue.
Words, Bones. What do you really think?
and even some humor. You've got time for a long scene to establish how these characters feel, what their relationship is, and build a little tension and conflict.
Right, you feel like the rhythm works better.
Yeah.
What were you about to? You were about to say something, Brian?
There's a line in my head, and I'm trying to remember if it's in the movie, that you should never have given McCoy says at the birthday, you should never have given the Enterprise back after V'ger. Is that in the film?
No.
Okay.
They never mentioned V'ger in anything after.
All right. I think it's
Spock
just a
Spock
deleted
definitely
line.
says it was a mistake to give up command.
Yeah,
right.
it's. I think it's in the novel, and I think it's in the script, but I think it's something that was cut. But,
more explicitly ties it to.
Yeah. There was I'm pretty sure there was a cut line, but the idea that maybe Kirk felt that he got the Enterprise the wrong way and gave up the Enterprise pretty quickly after V'ger might explain some of how we got to where we are here in this movie.
Yeah, we never do know why, after making such a point of grabbing the Enterprise back.
Yeah,
he would then let it slip through his fingers again.
Right. I just assumed that he doesn't get to have permanent command of the Enterprise. Like he was only given command for that one mission, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I did this one mission. I demoted that guy to first officer, and he actually got killed or no, missing in action."
And turned into a god thing, probably.
I at that point, I'm like, Starfleet would probably be like, well, okay, but that's not your job to be captain of the Enterprise.
We still have a fleet to organize.
Yeah. That's probably true, and really, it's not terribly important because we don't really need to know how he got exactly to this point. I think it's enough to see where he is now because they paint that so very well.
And this is supposed to be set. I don't know if it was originally intended at the time, but now, like in the continuity timeline, this is several years after the motion picture.
Right. Yeah. Brings things back into focus with where the actors are in their aging too.
Right.
There's kind of out of sync for the motion picture. They were older. They looked older than they should have looked. Now they look about the right age.
But I think Shatner and Nimoy actually age a good bit between the motion picture and the Wrath of Khan, like more than you typically would in 3 years. So right, I think it does kind of work. They just happen to be like hitting that age.
Nimoy in motion picture occasionally looked like I could have mistaken him for TOS.
He doesn't have like the stained teeth because I think he has dentures in the motion picture.
Oh, that's interesting.
I remember being struck when I was rewatching the motion picture recently. How damn skinny everybody looks. Now, partly it's those uniform designs that makes everybody look slimmer.
But it's like if you were not skinny, it would look really unflattering. Yes. So it's lucky that they were.
Yeah.
The maroon monsters in this movie do look really good on Nimoy and on Kirk.
Matt, are you familiar with the maroon monster terminology?
No, this is a new term to me.
It was to me too when Fatheree brought it up. But in fandom, apparently, it's the common term.
Yeah,
it's been around for several years now.
Yes, it's quite old. I never really liked it, but it is definitely what they're called. So.
Okay.
But I think
it seems to imply a judgment that I do not agree with.
I never really saw them as maroon monsters, but but it is something I've heard for like 30 years now.
Did you see them as a couch cushion with like a seatbelt in front of it?
No.
Well, now it's ruined for the rest of us.
I love those uniforms. I
think that aesthetically it's one of their best designs.
Yeah.
Even though it, in retrospect, is more military than I like my Trek. But it does look great.
Those bold colors really pop after the bland grays of the.
Well, the little flipped what do you call it, collar sort of thing?
Yeah.
Is it asymmetrical?
Well, yeah, it does. They like snap up.
It's double. Yeah, it's like a double-breasted closure on the front. But I mean, it's symmetrical. It's just the flaps are under. With the other flap, you can't see because it's underneath.
Right.
We're used to seeing one of the flaps undone with a bloody handprint. So.
Right.
But they definitely raised the stakes because they put everyone in a red shirt, so now anyone can die.
Yes.
And someone does.
And I think for the movies, especially Star Trek 2, 3, 6, and arguably even 5, the movies they want to tell, those are the right uniforms for those kind of tone that they were aiming for. You could say that maybe that wasn't the right tone for Star Trek 4, but they weren't wearing those uniforms for Star Trek 4.
And I do agree with Dave. They do look a little bit more militaristic than I would like in Star Trek. And I actually would prefer they had more color. I wish that they could have had Kirk in a gold maroon monster, a gold monster, and I guess Spock would be in gold because he's captain. And you have like McCoy in blue. No, I would have liked to have seen the more colorful uniforms. I love.
You've shown me there's Photoshop fan stuff out there.
I do still love the classic uniforms and the colors. So yeah, I would have been happy with that too.
Yeah, if you're watching this video on YouTube or Facebook or somewhere in video format, then right now I have like an image of like a fan made job of the Wrath of Khan uniforms, but if they were colored by division TOS style. I think that something like that would be really cool. But
having seen it, I honestly don't like how it works, how those work. I like the basic underlying idea of them keeping those colors around, but I don't think it works with the design aesthetics of these coats.
But these designs do look better for a cinematic presentation of Star Trek. They add just enough detail that it really works good on like a bigger screen with higher resolution. But it's not so much detail that it looks like too busy or too different from.
They found a pretty good sweet spot.
But we get to see the Enterprise being used as basically like Starfleet school, where we're just training cadets.
Oh,
so
I have to say one thing about that I thought worked very well, and that I think I like better than the motion picture. I do like in the motion picture when you see, the Enterprise kind of, still being fitted out and wires dangling and things like that. It feels more like a real ship. But the idea, and we talked about this a bit last week, that the ship is not quite in good shape and it's not really working properly. Here, you accomplish the same kind of thing. That is, you have the ship not operating its best, not because there's anything wrong with the ship. It's because it's crewed by a bunch of trainees.
Yeah, and it also gets damaged early on.
Yeah.
Right. So you've got a good reason for for the ship to not work at optimal performance without undermining the integrity of the ship that everybody loves.
That's when you have like a 26-year-old kid walk in and be like, "Hey, Harold Livingston, this is how you write a Star Trek movie."
Also, of course, having a whole bunch of kids on board makes all those deaths by burning a lot more impactful.
Yeah, as a kid, I was very taken with this movie immediately, but one of the things I remember, and maybe we can lean into this in a second, is as we get to maybe the Botany Bay and the discovery of it, is there's a darker tone in its dark moments that's almost horror level, kind of creepy and menacing. That really stuck with me. I guess I was probably a little horror fan in training, keying off your own interest.
Sure.
And I did not certainly expect a Star Trek movie to have that.
Well, we're post-Alien now.
Yep.
That's what some good sci-fi is you need some weird body horror stuff thing in there. And B, I think that's what Nicholas Myers wanted to do, was something edgier and scarier, and we're not being held by that we can do a PG instead of a G-rated movie. So I think that's they wanted to play around with some of that.
It's a lot more violent.
Star Trek always had like a horror element to it in the 60s. It did have kind of like a monster of the week type vibe in a lot of episodes.
Oh, but I'm thinking
like Charlie X taking off that woman's face and stuff.
Yeah, or the salt vampire.
But I'm thinking not even just monster of the week, but more just physical. Violent, horrific things happening to people. Throats cut, people being burned alive. It's
dramatic, bloody injuries from just being shot by another ship, right, which usually just amounts to casualty reports.
Right, the ship shakes up, and the guy who's going to get married dies. But otherwise, you don't really see the real consequences, and here you absolutely do.
You always see the consequences.
Well, let's get into con and talk about Ceti Alpha V and Chekhov and Captain Terrell beaming down and the discovery of the Botany Bay.
Yep.
And Chekhov saying, "Oh shit."
He doesn't. He says, "Damn."
No, he says he says the Russian. Oh shit.
Oh,
Russian.
that's right.
That's what. The Bazi Moy or whatever. I can't say it right. Yeah. That's oh shit in Russian. So
I didn't know that.
I don't think I knew that either.
Well, that makes it the first time anyone said shit in Star Trek.
Yeah. I mean, it beats Picard's. He says it in French.
Yeah. So the Botany Bay sequence, which first of all, it was cool to see the Reliant and Captain Terrell and Chekhov on another ship. Although I like, there's
and Kyle. Don't forget Kyle.
And Kyle.
Oh, yeah, they brought back Mr. Kyle from the original series.
Yes.
Like if just in case seeing Nurse Chapel and Yeoman Rand again in the motion picture, just in case that wasn't enough for you, they're going to bring back Mr. Kyle.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened to Leslie though. Leslie and Riley
is
are never to be seen again.
Yeah. I wanted to see Riley in the bowling alley, but that's okay. I'm still happy with what we got.
There's a part of me that always wants them to kind of have that family aspect and not break up. That weird thing that the shows train us to want for them to be a surrogate family.
Even though it makes no sense in the context of these Starfleet stuff.
Right. But realistically, yeah, Chekhov would move on and they'd find new roles.
I love that. I love Chekhov being on another ship to the point where I think it's so dumb that he comes back to serve on the Enterprise later.
It bugged me when I first saw it. I was like, oh man, don't break up the crew. I mean, dramatically, I can't argue with it. But young me was disappointed.
Instead of being trained by the shows to like want everyone to like stay together, like Dave mentioned, the shows actually frustrated me with how people like don't get promoted and don't transfer like year after year.
Right.
And when they bring it into the story and they have to come up with all these different excuses why Riker keeps turning down commands of his own ship.
Yeah.
Well, it's the way shows were structured.
That's because Patrick Stewart was supposed to quit. That was the idea, was that Patrick Stewart would only do this for a few years and then Riker would take over.
Well, like for the first, 40 or 50 years of like TV shows, also status quo type shows that had no true evolution of storylines was the common standard.
Right. But I do like seeing growth in the characters, and that is what I like in this movie. But it's another one of those little markers that things can change, things can be different. Don't assume things too much in this movie.
Well, one of the things they were actively trying to do was, because they were trying to make a franchise of films, was they were thinking, these actors are going to get old, they're going to start showing up, they're going to get too expensive, we had to work really hard just to get Spock to come back once. We are going to start sticking in young actors and slowly ease us into a whole new cast. That's what David and Saavik were supposed to be.
That theory did not play out.
It did not play out like that, but that
makes sense.
But that is what they were trying to do. Was the idea was very much, let's seed in some new actors as we go, and then we'll slowly shift over to these newer, younger, sexier actors.
Well, if nothing else, it works thematically with the youth versus age themes of the story.
I think if Ilea and Decker hadn't been so permanently written out of the motion picture, they probably would have been in this film.
Having Chekhov and Sulu and Uhura back would also help maintain some of that old guard, because in all honesty, nothing against those actors, but they would be much easier to keep around. Right? Than Shatner or Nimoy.
And they already thought they were writing Nimoy out. That was supposed to be his last movie.
That was the plan. With Walter Koenig, actually, he was excited to have Chekhov doing something more than delivering exposition like how he did in TOS.
It's his big movie. That is his big Star Trek story.
He got to scream in this a lot more than in
he did get
motion picture.
He got to scream in motion picture.
We need to talk about how he was not actually in Space Seed and was never on screen with Khan. In fact, he wasn't even on the show when that episode aired.
Minor continuity stuff.
But fortunately, the original series is so episodic, as you mentioned, that if you watch it in Stardate order, it at least establishes that he is on board the ship before Space Seed.
I prefer the production order of the original series, but
Stardate order.
I just assumed that he had a different. Do you watch the Next Generation in Stardate order?
Except for the Yar mess, you can't do the
Yar is alive after her death.
You have to make accommodations for that. Yes, absolutely.
I go with production order, but
the one failure does not mean the whole experiment.
For people who don't know what we're talking about, Khan says he never forgets a face when he sees Chekhov. And, of course, Chekhov had not shown up on the show at the time of Space Seed.
Yes, it was a Season 1 episode. Chekhov didn't join the show until Season 2. But Walter Koenig was obviously aware of that. He's like, this is one of the ones before I was on the show. He's like, I'm not going to say anything to anybody, because if I do, they'll write me out of this and they'll give it to George.
Yeah.
I think, Matt, you used to theorize that he just...
Why didn't George say something?
That Khan looked at all the memory banks and stuff on Enterprise,
no, this was actually... Right? I believe there are two explanations for it. One is in the Vonda McIntyre novelization, he's on the crew. He actually, I think, has a crush on Lieutenant MacGyver's
who Khan's wife,
who Khan hooks up with, and has some encounter with Khan on board the ship, and then somebody else wrote a book around the time of Star Trek II. I don't remember what it was, but it was includes a little history of Starfleet, and they address this issue in that. And the argument is that Chekhov knew about Khan from reading about him. It's like, this was a famous Enterprise encounter. I know about him. And he said, Khan, when he read through the all the computer files on the Enterprise, he clearly memorized the entire personnel roster.
Seems like something Khan would do.
Yeah, that feels a little bland. I prefer there was some there was some encounter off screen that we did not see.
Yeah, like I think Chekhov just wasn't a bridge officer.
Yeah,
maybe he was still like a cadet and he was doing like his 4th year on the ship, like how like Tilly did in season 1 of Discovery, and then like in season 2 he's actually like an ensign and then he gets like to work on the bridge or something like that.
I think it's perfectly reasonable. It's not something that
I've
ever
never
bothered
cared.
me. Well, I agree. It's a minor continuity bit.
What I wanted to mention was that the arrival on the Botany Bay is where there's this palpable aura of horror that I was talking about, that they hint at, by the way, in the opening, right before the credits, before James Horner's kind of more heroic music kind of kicks in for the credits. There's an eerie tone. It's just like this, like almost electronic tone, and this is what I would consider like the haunted house portion of the horror theme, as well as some monster stuff with the Ceti eels.
Yeah, but before we get into that, we should just mention that James Horner's score does so much for this movie. Very similar to how Jerry Goldsmith's did so much for the motion picture. And when they put Horner music over those motion picture special effects shots, instead of the Goldsmith music, it kind of tricks your brain into thinking you're not seeing the same material again.
That's a good point. That's true. It feels different. Yeah.
But then the
ironically, Horner is known for repeating himself, but
true.
That's just a funny irony. His music, his action music, and and also his heroic sort of naval type music will get the blood pumping as few other composers will.
The music really does take center stage in the Botany Bay scene when Khan does pull out the Ceti eels, and when
he is like a master villain who they just walked into his lair accidentally, and he's pretty scary.
It's a great scene. It's very suspenseful because assuming you hadn't seen the trailer and know where they are when they're just exploring and trying to figure out what the hell is
Chekhov's
this.
fear is palpable, and he recognizes
all the books on the shelf.
What was it? Was the Bible and was
Paradise Lost?
Paradise Lost, Moby Dick, was
Paradise,
King Lear on there?
King Lear,
yeah.
All stories of failed princes or kings or tales of vengeance.
Perfect reading material for a psychopath.
Yes,
and statutes and regulations.
Right. That was one of those. Like they kind of wish they had not wasted the shelf space on that one. But after
that's what really caused the madness. It wasn't the Ceti eels.
If he'd read statutes and regulations, he would have known about the prefix code. Just saying.
It just wasn't a page turner like the other ones.
But it's a great mysterious scene,
Arguably, by the way, it also includes the horror subgenre of torture porn, because, he, in a way that most villains kind of don't, they mostly throw people in dungeons or prison cells or something like that. While he's talking to them, does the torture interrogation scene, and it's pretty gruesome.
When I was a kid, I loved Star Trek too. After I got into Star Trek, and I would leave the room. I'd watch him when the Khan started pulling out the worms. I'd go leave the worm and wait till I heard the screams, and then I'd come back in.
Right.
Yeah,
because I couldn't handle it. Because I couldn't handle horror movies at all as a kid. I didn't watch the Alien movies until I was 17. So,
I'm glad you mentioned them, though, because I don't think that scene probably would have existed if Aliens had not kind of introduced that kind of infectious, parasitic horror notion of dangers of alien life.
I'd never thought of that before, but that is really cool.
Yeah, that was absolutely the Alien doing that. So
that might have been like a reaction to Alien, but also just the performance from Pedro Gonzalo Montalban y Marino. Is his full name? I believe. I think that's right. Correct me if I'm wrong. But
I cannot correct you. I have no idea.
He maintains such a sense of menace.
Yeah.
The entire time he's on screen, the entire movie, but also a lot of times he's enjoying what he's doing. And even he's angry at these guys. He's yelling at this is Ceti Alpha V, and he just like the fury when he hears Kirk is Admiral, Admiral Kirk.
Yeah. Oh, he's fantastic.
It makes you want to repeat it right as soon as you say it, as soon as he says it, because his delivery is so malicious, deliciously malicious.
He gives 3 separate brilliant admirals in a row.
Nobody
get 3 for the price of one actor.
Yeah. Any actor could pull off one, takes a skilled actor to pull off 2, but 3?
3, yeah.
That's insane.
And all 3 are great.
And yeah, like with all the hate and anger, like he still like enjoys being the prince, the superhuman, the superior man. And whenever he has like the opportunity like to lord over someone, you know, like, oh, this is what this guy lives for. When he's telling Tyrell and Chekhov, like, you're in a position to demand nothing, and even though he has to follow that up with like, and I'm in a position to offer nothing,
to grant
nothing. But then like when he has complete control of the situation and has them like literally under his control after they're infected with the Ceti eels.
Possession, like, by the way, going with the horror trope there.
Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it's fun to watch a really sick, nasty villain just enjoy being sinister. For whatever reason, like audiences always can plug into that.
He's like one of my favorite screen villains ever. Like up there with like I guess I'd say Hannibal Lecter and what's the guy Hans Gruber and Die Hard. You know those as far as larger than life
Heath
villains.
Ledger's Joker.
I think it was Harve Bennett who who was also not a big Star Trek fan before the movie.
Yeah, but he did watch the entire original series. Like it took him a month,
right?
And he watched the entire thing.
And he picked Space Seed as this would be this is a good villain. And
good catch.
I have heard I've heard people remark that there's a change from the the wily calculating Khan of Space Seed. And the vengeance consumed Khan you see in Star Trek 2. And, well, first of all, I would say, after 15 years of living in, what's a pretty shitty piece of planetary real estate, I'm okay with, vengeance, starting to consume you a bit. But also, he seems to me to be, I see real continuity between both performances. Even the old Khan, from Space Seed was very much somebody who would start to lose it when he could not make things work. He really does seem to rely on the fact that his superior intelligence can make things happen.
Kirk called him out in the first one, and he does his "We gave them order" and pounds the table. But Kirk knows how to poke at his ego, even back then.
Yeah. Even when he's, I think when he's trying to get the other crew members to show him how the ship works, to come over to his side in exchange for not killing Captain Kirk, and nobody will help him. And he says it's all so useless. He kind of loses it, just gets pissed.
But he also can deliver all those quotes and make it work.
Yeah,
endless amounts of quotes from Moby Dick and from Paradise Lost and just one after another.
Tuned up for a little bit for the 23rd century.
Kirk does some quotes, but most of them are reading out of a book and stuff. Khan's just throwing them everywhere. Like
nobody can touch the Khan's Moby Dick delivery. In fact, I had no idea it was from Moby Dick. When I first read Moby Dick in high school, and was struggling a bit, but when I came to the first quote, what in Wrath of Khan is, I'll chase him around the moons of Nibia and around the Antares Maelstrom, around Perdition's Flame. When I first found that and realized, oh my God, this is in Star Trek 2. This is the best book ever.
Yeah, I have the opposite experience because I read Moby Dick in high school by choice because I knew that stuff like that was from the book. But I actually thought it was very boring, and I don't know if I can agree that it needs to be like these top 10 best like American novels ever written list and stuff because I was very bored by it.
Because you were always like, man, I'm glad they did not include all that whaling shit. But then Star Trek 4.
It all ties
back
together.
With the whales.
Yeah.
But what you were saying about Khan in the original series and with like all the classic literature that he loves to quote, that works out so well because A, Nicholas Meyer loves classic literature and loves referring to that type of stuff, and B, they do set that up in the original series. In fact, that episode ended with them quoting Milton in Paradise Lost, which ties wonderfully into this movie and the story they created of Paradise literally being lost.
Yeah.
Yes. Right.
Should we talk about that's probably a good segue to talk about the Genesis device. And by the way, this is just a very tightly written script. There's almost no line that doesn't in some way reflect on something in the future, pay off later, or delineate a character in some notable way.
Yeah, and just as the script is that efficient, also like the visual storytelling does so much of setting stuff, like just seeing things like the shields go down on the little display of how like the shields work.
Right, something that otherwise, in the past, you only knew that shields were down because somebody told you shields were down.
Shields at 73%,
you get the, you can see them dropping and you understand what's what's happening
arguably, the Genesis device video is like which is literally the proposal that they did to get their grant, is a great way to explain to the audience what the Genesis device is.
Yes.
And really cool that the people who would become Pixar got to work on this very early CGI shot. I guess this was the first CGI effect in Star Trek.
Yeah, I think it was, first...
Was there not some in the motion picture?
No. That was all like Trumbull slip scan stuff.
Okay. Yeah.
But no, I think it was like one of the first all CGI scenes, or the first in a movie.
Yeah.
And it looks great.
And it's perfect use for it, because it's not actually like an effect of something that's real. It's like, here's
our simulation.
Here's a fake simulation. Like, here's our animation of an animation.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And it still looks pretty good.
I also like for the Genesis, the device. I mean, they run with that biblical thing. It's not just Genesis. Genesis is this new world, right? Well, Khan is the guy who's thrown out of heaven, cast down. He's Lucifer. He hijacks Genesis just like Lucifer does in the Bible. And to get revenge on God, he screws up the earth just like Khan screws up Genesis. Kirk doesn't lose his son immediately. He loses his best friend, who then has to be resurrected to make it all fixed again.
It's crazy.
He does end up losing his son in Star Trek 3, however, to the planet Genesis and the problems created by Khan from hijacking Genesis, which is basically the story of the Bible. So, that is, I'm not a huge Bible nut, but I was very impressed with, wow, that really works out there.
It occurs to me that although it's meant to be a scene of him taking charge, Kirk eating the apple later, yet another biblical thing of perhaps bringing some of this upon himself, which is the whole running theme going back to space.
And yet Kirk is always the one who will choose the knowledge of good and evil over the innocence.
So he'll take the apple.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, it's also when he's saying, he's eating the apple when he says, I don't believe in the no-win scenario. So there's a bit of irony there, because...
Is it sort of I don't believe that gaining knowledge is loss of innocence?
Yes. Yes.
And he's proven wrong. It's like...
Well, he's going to gain some knowledge by the end of this movie.
Yes. Well, is he proven wrong? At the end, he says, I feel young.
True. But he's still...
he's certainly gone through a personal transformation.
Only through the sacrifice of his friend.
Yes.
So it's...
But and in most mythologies, the knowledge of good and evil is actually a good thing. That's a good step for the society to grow up, is to eat that apple or to find.
You have to
whatever.
go out on your heroic quest and learn what the world is.
Yes.
I'm gonna backtrack just a little bit to the Genesis simulation that's shown on the screen.
Yep.
That when Kirk chooses to show this to Bones and Spock so that they know what's going on, it's interesting that Spock wasn't aware of this, and he's a captain. But
why should he be?
I mean, first of all, obviously it's because we need it for exposition to us. But in story, I don't think it's too hard to find out that it's just something that was top secret enough.
No, I just think that's interesting that it was so top secret. But then Kirk is fine with showing it to Dr. McCoy, who doesn't really need to know it. But of course he's going to show that.
Of course he's going to show it to McCoy.
Yeah, because he needs McCoy to be part of the conversation, and we get.
He should have just taken out an apple. He's like, I don't believe in rules and regulations.
We get a really cool recreation of a classic TOS Trinity scene with the three of them, which they did one time in the motion picture when they had the three of them, and they're talking about Spock's Kolinar, but that was more about Kirk, can we trust Spock? And it was it was a little weird, where here it feels very genuine, very true to the original series, and Brian,
the classic dynamic is there where it was missing from the motion picture.
Yes, and Brian pointed this out to me and Dave yesterday, that it was written by a guy who had never watched Star Trek until he started working on this movie.
He watched a few episodes.
Right, when he started working on this movie.
Yes.
Yeah, it's amazing that he was able to, grasp those essential elements and then transplant them into his script so effectively.
Yeah, for a guy who didn't really plug into the aliens and the more science fiction-y stuff,
His technobabble is actually pretty terrible. Just as a side note, Nicholas Meyers' technobabble is actually some of the not so much bad science as just doesn't fit with anything else said about Star Trek.
The photon control,
the hyperwave radio.
But when he comes to writing the human side of stuff and the character things, he is spot on.
Yes, absolutely.
But yeah, do y'all want to talk about like the first encounter between the Reliant and the Enterprise, that initial battle?
Yeah,
that thing is so. Given this has that the classic suspense element where the audience has knowledge that the characters don't have. And it's
right. The whole time you're like inwardly screaming, "Kirk, raise the goddamn shield!"
Yeah.
And Reliant keeps getting closer and closer, and until you crank up that tension to an almost unbearable level. Where
also Khan is so fucking into it.
Yeah.
Oh, like we are one big happy Starfleet.
Yes.
The one point in the movie where he's like almost falling out of his seat when he's pointing at the view screen to the Enterprise, he's like, "There she is, there she is," and it's so interesting to see like a Khan like enjoying his evilness in this movie. I don't want to talk about it too much now because we'll get into it down the road. But in the other Khan movie that came out, Star Trek Into Darkness. Like that
he was all reserved.
Portrayal of Khan, never had that insane bloodlusty joy.
I think Khan sat there on Ceti Alpha V for 15 years, imagining every beat of what he was going to do when he got off of here. So he is getting to live out his dream that he has had every day.
I assume that he had like a whole store of Melville and
he's like, and then I'm going to say this quote, and then after Kirk says, "Oh my God, I'm screwed," I'm going to do this quote on him, and
it's funny. I hate to jump to the end real briefly and spoil it. When Khan dies, without ever having confronted Kirk, and very like physically, like face to face, as far as he knows, he is going to win.
Right.
So in a weird way, he dies happy.
Yeah.
Probably in horrible pain.
But he loses happily, and Kirk wins sadly.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a super fascinating way to think about it.
And that's why Nicholas Meyers is a genius.
Yeah. And 26 years
old. Yeah.
Even the getting back to the battle, the way they ramp up tension in the approach. Right up
James Horner's music got to get credit.
Oh, sure. It would not be the same without it. But right up to the very end, where you're doing the fast cuts between the two ships, their shields are still down. Raise ours. And then you come back to Spock saying they're raising shields. Lock phasers. They're locking phasers. And
Kirk actually feels old there. He looks a little bit like a confused older guy who's like, "Wait, what do we do now? What happens?"
And he does say,
and Khan, who looks visibly old, is like almighty and potent.
Yes.
Yeah, and everything that Kirk does is too late. The shields don't get up in time. He turns on the view screen to see the torpedo coming too late. And of course,
I had never seen the Enterprise get wrecked so hard, so viscerally.
Yeah.
So seeing all those crewmen dying and the guys screaming that they can't breathe and stuff like that, in like the engineering.
Yeah. The visible burned scars on the side of the ship that you've never seen before.
Yeah, it was actually like in its way as startling to me when I first saw it as like the Ceti Eels thing.
Yeah,
not quite the same type of
I
reaction,
found it
but
fairly horrifying. It's like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, because the Enterprise is like that's our baby. Like we love that ship.
Yeah, you can shake it around, but like.
I will say the novelization spends all this time getting you to fall in love with Peter Preston as a wonderful, naive, innocent boy that you just think is just starting life, and then they kill him hard in that book, and you're like,
yeah, it's messed up. I think Matt and I, by the way, we both read and very much enjoyed the Vonda McIntyre adaptation, which expands on it, as she also did Star Trek 3, and there are nice companion books.
Yeah.
So it's just a minor recommendation.
Yeah.
I really like the director's cut of this movie because it includes the scene where they establish that Preston is the nephew of Scotty, so it does give that death a little bit more weight.
Yep.
And again, the visual storytelling of having that blood on Kirk's shirt.
Yeah,
right.
And he feels
it's like he has been touched literally touched by death.
The guilt he feels.
An invisible symbol, of his failure.
Of being caught with his britches down.
Yeah. Kirk never had to deal with his consequences of his actions but now everything is his consequences of his decisions.
This movie is
and his innocence is gone and stained. The white innocence, red stained.
It's we were saying earlier, or maybe it was this in the previous podcast about motion picture, that Trek is not always super nuanced. It deals with big symbols and big grandiose things, and they do throughout this. But they do it in such a way that you don't watch it and you're not constantly cognizant of like, oh, that blood on his lapel, probably a symbol. You don't think about it. That apple he's eating, probably a symbol.
Do y'all think it might be fair to say that Nicholas Meyer might have been kind of frustrated with Kirk being the flawless, Mary Sue-ish character of the original series, and wanted to craft a story about about this guy actually having to face consequences?
Right, it's like a legend crashing into reality.
Yeah.
I think that's fair to presuppose.
I had never thought of that before. But
it's also taking the idealized 60s motif and smashing it into that early 80s darkness that was going on in our culture.
Right, or the fallout of the 70s where there was like this kind of nihilism chic running through a lot of movies.
How does that 60s idealism survive
when you run into Chinatown?
And also, I think, because I know that the naval elements were interesting to Nicholas Meyer, and it's kind of hard to tell, a story about, Navy ships that has dramatic weight without real consequences. Like, well, these guys, like you are throwing, deadly weapons around. Like you've got to have some.
Kirk told him that he told the crew they're going to have to grow up a little bit. Okay, so he warned them. I say let him crash.
The movie was nautical but nice, as Nicholas Meyer says. His wife called it that, and he said like the way that he finally figured out how to make Star Trek work in his brain, his very like non-science fiction-y brain, was he figured out, oh, this is like those Captain Horatio Hornblower books I read as a boy. It's just like that, but set in outer space.
Yeah.
The cool thing about that is Captain Horatio Hornblower was one of Gene Roddenberry's inspirations for his lead captain, originally going to be called Robert April, but what evolved into Captain Kirk had Hornblower in his DNA.
Right, but he independently discovered that.
Yes, and separate from that, Nicholas Meyer was able to figure it out.
Yes. Yeah. And figure out something that a lot of other people have missed about classic Star Trek.
We got so lucky that he was the one who directed this movie.
Well, because the franchise could have fallen apart.
They were ready for it. They were ready for this to be the end. If it didn't make money, they were trying to say like, can we do something on a lower budget instead of spending $40 million like we did on the motion picture? Can we do something on a lower budget, make Star Trek work? They created what, like we said at the beginning of the show, most people consider this the best Star Trek movie of all time.
Now, Father, you once upon a time told me that you pointed out that it actually lacks many of the elements that like we usually kind of consider standard Trek elements, like usually in the more episodic formats. And certainly aliens would be one of the background things, but what else did you feel like?
Well, the motion picture, for all its faults, it does do a good job of really expanding the world, like letting us see a bit of Earth, letting us see like a whole bunch of aliens instead of Spock being the only non-human on the ship. Stuff like that. And I wish that this movie had more. Like, it would have been so easy to make one of the cadets on the ship an Endorian, or have a Tellarite at the
Nicholas Myers looked at an Andorian and said, oh, fuck that.
I can't do blue.
Blue with antenna? What the hell is this bullshit?
There were plenty of aliens in Star Trek VI, also directed by Nicholas Myers.
Yeah, well,
so he got there eventually.
Yeah, he got there eventually.
Yeah, baby steps there.
But yeah, I'm sure they could have done some sort of aliens that would have met with his approval if they tried.
But no, you're right. This is a very, I think, deliberately human story. And very...
It has a Shakespearean vibe to it. It also has a military vibe to it in some ways. Sure. There's more ship-to-ship combat that's kind of extended.
We should talk about, before we get into the ending, just talk about Carol and David Marcus, I think. Yep. We need to mention them.
Yes.
That was another very bold choice, was to take the hero of the franchise and turn him into, I don't want to say a deadbeat dad, but and I don't mean this in a negative way. I'm not beating up the characters too much. I kind of like that they have what might be flawed or questionable. But the conversation between Carol Marcus and Kirk, the old flame of his, when Kirk says to him, how did you never tell him? So we get the impression David has no idea Kirk is his dad.
Right.
And she says, well, you were going to be in your world, I was going to be in my world, I wanted him in mine. And so you get like this impression that these two parents decided that this boy would grow up without his dad in his life at all. That's kind of a selfish act on the parents to be like, I don't really want to have a kid, you don't want to share a kid, so I'm just going to bounce and this guy won't have a dad. That's kind of selfish for the characters. And I'm not like attacking the movie for doing this.
It kind of seemed like Dave, at least by the time he'd reached adulthood, was kind of fine with not having anything to do with Kirk or Starfleet. Yeah.
He had built up a notion of what Kirk was.
Yeah.
It's just like it adds a layer of nuance to these characters that I find interesting.
Yeah.
They would never have done anything close to this in the 60s.
I also thought that the actress playing Carol Marcus, did a great job throughout of feeling like a character who, I think in a way is a match for Kirk. She is not one of in some ways like the somewhat more bimbo-y chicks from the shows, the quick to fall in love. She feels like a mature character, and I really feel that they are exes who clearly care for each other, but also clearly hurt each other. So their discussion in the Genesis cave, I think, is one of the really strong emotional moments in it.
Yeah. They can still, they're still talking about their past, and it's still painful.
And Kirk dealing with the consequences of his actions again.
But they still, but
in some ways, she knows him as few other people do.
Right. She can tell just by looking at him that it's like, tell me what you're feeling.
We get a hint of that,
and she wants to.
She's
not embittered. Well, beyond what you might expect.
When she refers to him as Jim Kirk was a lot of things, but he's never a Boy Scout. They kind of plant the seed there that there's this strong familiarity, and people who know Kirk would. He's kind of pop culture is kind of this big deal about him being the swinging horn dog, but a lot of people think, I wonder if there's a past romance between these two characters, and then we get the payoff of seeing that expanded on later. But it's kind of strange that none of the movies ever decided to bring her back, because she does have such a presence in this one.
Yeah, I would have been happy to see her again. She's a good character.
Yeah, I don't know if that was ever pursued in the novels. But
I know the novels did.
She's in the Star Trek 3. She has some scenes in the Star Trek 3 and Star Trek 4 and Star Trek 6 novelizations.
Matt, something that you brought up back in 2016 when you were on the podcast before was that there is a possible, if you want to retcon it, reference to Carol Marcus in the TOS second pilot, Where No Man Has Gone Before.
Yeah. Is this the Gary Mitchell talking about the back at the academy, the blonde that he
in the lab that he threw towards Kirk to get him off of his ass.
Kirk says, "I almost married her."
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And Bones and Spock both know her, which is interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
Which seemingly by. Bones knows that she's Kirk's old flame, because when he says it never rains but it pours when they get the message coming in, he clearly knows there's a painful past. Spock, I get the impression, only knows her by professional reputation. Yeah.
I think it could have gone either way, because Kirk is just. Oh yeah, you two know each other. And
I think the novelization establishes that David, when he was a kid, met both Spock and McCoy, and and Kirk, and thought Spock was the cool one, and that's the only one he wanted to pay. He wanted to know more about Spock.
I wish you were my dad.
Yeah.
So let's quick talk about David. He's another, in a way, I think he almost doesn't get the credit of the actor, maybe, and the character, because in a way, when you're compared to Kirk, it's easy to fall short. But he's a guy who does believes in what he does, and
very strong-willed.
Strong-willed. I actually like all the scenes with Carol, David, and their rapport together. First of all, the scenes you see with the other regular scientists, and the sense of their community and knowing each other, their sort of distrust of the military. There is a sense of shared history that's just hinted at, but you get a fuller picture.
They're violently beaten dead corpses hanging upside down in the station.
More horror movie stuff there for sure.
Rated PG. Puddles of blood on the floor that I think would get you an R rating today. But
his David's final scene with Kirk, where he's got to struggle to tell him that he's proud to be his son.
Yeah,
is I think a really noteworthy scene and a strong.
Yeah, and then very that hug that's like very kind of awkward and tentative at first.
Yeah, right. And he did just see what like holding a grudge can do. It can turn you into like an insane psychopath who's obsessed with vengeance. So, it's also kind of neat to me personally, just because like I wasn't really close to my dad growing up, but then like after I reached like adulthood, we kind of like reconnected and became good friends. So I kind of figured out at some point like my dad has a lot of Captain Kirkish traits, so that's kind of cool, I guess.
Oh wow.
Yeah, for sure.
But there's more to talk about on David in the next movie. But I think it is cool when Carol does tell Kirk that he's a lot like you in a lot of ways, and we kind of see some of that play out in Star Trek 3 that we can talk about next week.
Yeah, totally.
But do y'all want to get into like just like the ending and the battle in the Matara Nebula and the death of Spock?
Yep. Great bit of pseudoscience to use a nebula to basically as a plot device that to put them on a level playing field. It's just a cool. It doesn't it's not how nebulas work. They actually span what?
Light years.
Yeah. Light years, but as a movie device, it's basically a murky sea to fight in.
They look
so
great.
It is a good example of how to use techno-babble in a way that is effective and easily understandable by even the most casual viewers.
Shields would be useless.
Yeah. You're
the way that they can't see each other until they're really close, and it makes it so suspenseful. Yeah. My gripe with this is that I think it is kind of lame that the three-dimensional thinking is what defeats Khan. He is from the 20th century where things like submarines and airplanes existed, but he still can't comprehend like 3D combat in spaceships.
I do think that there's a reasonable case to be made that he simply what did he say? He lacks your experience or something like that. Did Spock say that about him?
Oh, he's intelligent but not experienced.
Yes. Right. Yeah. So he knows all that stuff, but he literally just has not flown a starship around a lot.
And also his initial plan is a surprise attack, which works amazingly well, cripples the Enterprise. And after that, his plan is to simply use the superior firepower to defeat her. He doesn't need to do any elaborate planning. He does have a severely undermanned ship anyway. Yeah. So doing some of the elaborate stuff, even though it's certainly possible, I think is it does seem. I see your point that it seems like.
Sure. I think it's fine. It's fine. Kirk makes loads of mistakes in this movie. Khan is allowed to make a mistake, or two as well. It makes them more interesting.
He specifically,
if they're both.
He's taunting them.
I mean, he's very much a he's very much a instead of Z minus 10,000 meters, he's much more of a full power damn you kind of guy at the end. And I buy that.
And I actually don't like the villains who always are a step ahead of the hero until the final act, who never make a mistake, who always seem to be on the ball and know everything.
Right.
Arguably,
Khan did not know about the prefix code. There's little gaps in there.
Yeah.
Kirk got the small victory of hey, you did not. You didn't get me on regular one, and as he tries to taunt him, fails to bring him down. By the way, buried alive, another horror trope.
But it isn't just the usual villain wails on the hero all the way into the end when the hero suddenly triumphs. No, there's a back and forth chess game going on, and Khan is winning, but it is a chess game.
This is the Khan who spent 15 years progressively losing it on a planet.
Yeah.
And he's played this cat and mouse game, and I think he thought he was going to take it fast. He's probably used to those kind of victories. So Kirk stretched that out to a longer fight, and then he wound him up hardcore outside the nebula, and then Khan's kind of dropped the ball.
But and I guess the whole time Khan did have this trump card of, at any moment I can just flip on this Genesis box and kill us all.
Yep.
Of course, that doesn't work exactly how he would like it to, thanks to the sacrifice of Spock.
Yes.
And just that death scene where when we see Kirk. First of all, that shot when he sees the chair is empty, that's incredible and impactful.
Yes,
but then
and the music that accompanies that is that whole scene from the empty chair to the end of the scene.
When he's down there next to the glass door and sees Spock, and the moment that really hits me hard is when Spock tries to walk over to the door to where Kirk is,
yeah.
and he like walks into it, and it's just it feels so real world. Like, oh my god, that guy is severely fucked up and out of it.
Yeah. Well, even like kind of like they start setting you up for it when McCoy says, "Better hurry."
Yeah.
There's like, I mean, I hate to say it, but anybody who's experienced something with a pet. But where I think is like almost anybody that you tend to have had several pets in your lifetime,
right?
And there those kind of things come up. Obviously, it comes up with people as well. But
yeah, I think that's weird that you would go to pets and not like.
People. It's because it's because it happens. I think more often that if you as a pet person,
well, pets are perfect. People are not. Spock is perfect, ergo pet.
There we go.
But I have said before, like on here, it has come up before in discussions of Star Trek. But to me personally, like I think the worst thing that happens in the human experience is like the death of a loved one, and you definitely feel the weight of that here with Kirk and Spock, and with the audience and Spock.
Well, and you're looking at a Spock who's finally got it all together. We have throughout all the original series, Spock is tortured.
He's torn between two worlds.
Anytime he gets his emotions out, he's all like, "Oh my god, I've got all these issues." Anytime the emotions come out, pretty much with Spock, and then we see him try to go full on logic in the motion picture, and then finally with the mind meld with V'ger, he realizes, that's not the way, and he embraces his human half. He cries. He grabs Kirk's hand. He's like this, and this, this simple feeling, and then we get a fully balanced, fully zen, fully at peace with himself Spock in Star Trek 2.
No ego to bruise when Kirk takes over.
And I remember reading an old review written back in '82 of Star Trek 2, where somebody pointed out there was nowhere left to take Spock at that point, so of course he had to die, because he had found his arc was complete. And it was actually kind of a cynical review, and I didn't agree with the bashing of the movie overall, but I had to admit there was something of a point there.
Yeah, there's definitely a grain of truth to that, and at least dramatically speaking, it's the most potent thing to do.
It's dramatically satisfying, but emotionally painful with the character that you're attached.
It's also the ultimate defeat of Kirk in a lot of ways. Like we've never seen, he's gone through so much in this movie, but he's never as broken as he was here.
It was a no-win scenario,
right? The Kobayashi Maru metaphor, which
when worse than
Spock
kill
says,
you, I've
Spock
hurt
says,
you.
What do you think of my solution? Like it's a heartbreaker.
And it was almost like it was a solution for not Spock. I mean, he does say I'd never faced it before, but it's almost like when Kirk can't cheat, when he does have to face the no-win scenario. This is what Spock does. Spock will intervene and take the hit for Kirk. Like that's another thing of being a great commander and a great leader, is that you'll have people who will step in for you like that.
Right, and I guess the Spock's solution to the Kobayashi Maru is not to cheat, because this is the real world and you can't cheat. But if you're willing to make the sacrifice, then you can still win. And Spock is willing to make the sacrifice. Kirk is not willing for him to do that, and he's got to learn to cope with it.
Yeah. Heartbreaker scene. I always cry.
The movie ends with Kirk saying that he feels young after going through all of this shit.
And you have that again.
He has at that point reconnected with his son.
You have multiple elements that all tie together into making him feel young. His reconnecting with his son, his coming to grips with the no-win scenario, through coming to grips with Spock's sacrifice, the Genesis planet, new life, and then neatly tied up with the ending lines from Tale of Two Cities.
Yes, which ties back into the beginning of the book when he asks Spock, is there a message here?
Right.
And Spock says, what does he say?
None that I am aware
of. Except of course, happy birthday.
Yes.
But
surely the best of times.
Yes.
Which of course it's not.
It was the worst of times.
Yeah.
But then you have the other famous line from that book, which I read this in high school also, and I like this more than Moby Dick. But when the character goes to put his head on the gallows in the book, when what's the line exactly of all the things I've done?
It's a far, far better thing I've done.
Yeah,
a far better resting place.
Yes.
Yeah, and
which
ties into Spock's self-sacrifice,
right,
in the movie.
It's a crazy level of depth. I would also say he has at that point fulfilled Spock's prophecy, his suggestion, his Zen-like suggestion that his first best place is as a starship captain, and he has kind of renewed himself in that role.
I think he's renewed his goal. I think he's decided that he wants. I think that is his new. He's going to make sure he stays in charge of a starship.
Right.
Star Trek 3 will have other plans for him, but
we'll get into that next week.
He'll get there eventually.
We'll be talking about that Sunday when we revisit Star Trek 3: The Search for Spock.
Can I just say, by the way, the outro of the thing with Spock himself reading the classic Space, the Final Frontier is a beautiful little capper to it.
Yeah, and was meant to kind of reassure the audience, like, don't be too depressed, don't come running at us with torches and pitchforks. There's hope out there. We want to end this thing on some hope.
My recollection was that the Nimoy reading the piece was Nicholas Meyer's approved. That was the one thing he said. Okay. That's okay,
because Nicholas Meyer was he was kind of opposed to them kind of undercutting the death by hinting at a Spock resurrection as a possibility in a sequel.
Right, showing torpedo on the.
But I think Nicholas Meyer has softened on that over the years, and he came back to work on the movies in Star Trek 4 and Star Trek 6. So I do want to just close things out here talking about how I think there is much as there is a trinity of Kirk, Spock, and McCoy. On the Star Trek TOS movies, there's a trinity of Harve, Bennett, Leonard Nimoy, and Nicholas Meyer, where all three of those guys were working on the stories and writing and directing of movies 2 through 6 for the most part. And anytime you had 2 or more of them working behind the scenes, you had a damn good Star Trek movie.
Is that formula is specifically contrived just to exclude Star Trek 5, right?
Well, no, because you don't have. I mean, yeah, I guess that kind of works out that way. But I mean, just like my favorite 4 Star Trek movies are 2, 3, 4, and 6, and it's hard for me to rank them in exact order. But those are my top 4 Star Trek movies, without a doubt.
Star Trek 2 is tops or near tops for everybody, I think.
Most days I feel 2 is superior to 1, but it is occasionally I will wake up and say that 1 is superior to 2. But most days 2 is superior to 1 in my mind as just an overall brilliant piece of storytelling.
I vary in the placements of some of the other movies, and by the way, maybe I don't know if we should wait till we get to the end of this or something, but it'd be kind of fun to do our lists.
Yeah.
But 2 is pretty much always at the top of mine.
Yeah, me too. And I kind of consider 2, 3, 4, and 6 interchangeable, but 4 was my favorite growing up.
Interchangeable or just like part of one big story?
Both.
Okay.
But yeah, 4 was definitely my favorite growing up as a kid. 2, to me, I do have to say, it is the most expertly crafted, I think might be what I said earlier, of the movie. So it's probably the one I have the most respect for, especially knowing as much behind the scenes as I do. But I think we're going to have to go ahead and sign off on that note. Like I mentioned, we will be back next week with the next movie, Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock. Because unlike that reviewer from 82, Spock's arc was not over, and there were many more Spock stories to tell, and we'll talk about that Sunday. So be sure to check us out. And if you have any thoughts on The Search for Spock, any thoughts on The Voyage Home, or any of the Star Trek movies, we're going to be going through all of them. So by all means, let us know, and we might be able to use your thoughts, comments, or questions in upcoming Tex-Trek content. But we will sign off now, and until next time, as always, live long and prosper, y'all. Thank all of you so much for checking out this installment of Tex-Trek. I hope you enjoyed it. Please be sure to like our YouTube videos and subscribe to our channel. Audio-only version of episodes are available at our website, www.tex-trek.com. Please check out our site, especially if you just want an audio-only podcast. We have that available for you. Y'all can also keep up with us online. You can follow us on Twitter, @TXTrek, or you can check us out on Facebook at www.facebook.com/tex-trek. Please, by all means, let us know what you think by dropping a comment anywhere you see fit. We definitely want to hear your feedback. Let us know what you liked and what you would like to see more of, what you would like to see differently going forward. If you want to email me directly, go ahead. I can be reached at fathereeactual@tex-trek.com. Thank all y'all again. Take care.